You know, I've listened to you all summer, hearing you today. You've never hidden the fact how much you didn't like the outcomes with distance learning, how much you want students back in school. I know you're saying you're going to announce it next week, but it sounds like your mind is basically made up to allow in-person learning. Is that fair? And if not, what left in this final week could suddenly swing you to sending all the kids back to virtual learning?
Great question. So, you know, we have the 5 metrics, and one of them is testing, to make sure that we can have the level of testing that I know we need. I am highly confident that we're going to be able to make that announcement this Wednesday, as I said. But, you know, we haven't made it yet. We have 2 days worth of work to do to make sure that we're going to be able to get it done. So if for some reason we can't get that done, which I don't anticipate, then I'd have to pause. And then cases. Thank God we're in a good place right now. Like 39 is great. But next Sunday night, we'll look back at this week's cases. And if we start to see a spike or something happens, then we'll have to pull back. So you're right. I mean, right now, as we stand here, it seems highly unlikely that next Monday I would say no. But I'm going to stick to what we said from the beginning. Operational readiness, testing, contact tracing, data, case prevalence. And Sunday, we're going to see if we check all those boxes, which I think we will, based on where we are today.
And one follow-up question for the commissioner, because I assume you'd have more read on this than the governor. Are you getting data from the districts about the share of parents opting out? I'm hearing anecdotally parents mentioning to me, no, we're not going to send my kids back. Can you give us any read on how significant a percentage that is across the state? And are you seeing some districts where a high percentage of parents are already opting through pods or whatnot, versus other places where a lot of them are ready to go back in person?
Yeah, so it varies district to district. So we are getting the numbers from districts. We have some districts where it's almost 50-50, and other places where it's a small number of parents that want to do distance learning and they want their kids in. As of Thursday, Providence only had 5,000 parents out of the 24,000, and I'm sure that number will grow a little more, but I think that there's parents that want both, right? Parents that want both, and the places that they are most worried about, they're asking to move to another district, where they've already heard anecdotally that the district plans on just having one version of instruction. They've emailed me and asked, can I move to another district? So is that allowed? We're looking into that. We're looking into, you know, in a pandemic, if my child really needs in-person instruction and another district is providing it, we're going to look into that. Absolutely. We want parents to understand that we know that there isn't one size fits all.
Governor, on the way in here, we were greeted by protesters really from both sides of this conversation. Now we can hear car horns. It seems like getting word that that's also a continuation of this protest. What is your office hearing from teachers and administrators about, just from the inside baseball perspective, should distance learning be prioritized or should in-person learning be prioritized? What sort of feeling do you get from, again, that inside baseball perspective?
Yeah. So I think it's about what you see outside. So for those of you at home who aren't here, there's protesters outside. Some are parents holding signs that say, real kids deserve real school. Like, parents are pushing us to get kids back in school. And then also folks blowing their horns and such, saying it's not safe to be in school. So that's what we hear. You know, that's what we hear. We hear from everybody. Here's my assessment, for what it's worth. I think teachers miss their kids, they're professionals, and they want to be back in the classroom doing their job. They realize distance learning is going to leave a lot of kids behind. But they are demanding, rightfully, that we make it safe for them to do so, which is why I announced today we're going to do an inspection of every school building before you go back. We're going to have best-in-class testing that the state will run. We're going to promise no one ever falls behind on masks and cleaning supplies, because if your district does, we get you covered. So I think that it's all over the map for parents, truthfully. A lot of parents who have kids who are developmentally disabled, kids have underlying health conditions, a lot of them are just not going back in. You know, we respect that. I think, from my perspective, the average parent has seen their kids suffer and struggle, and they're anxious to get their kids back to school.
Quick follow-up as well, just back to last week. Has the DOH signed off on any of the plans put forth by districts? Anything approved yet? I know you gave praise to SK and Newport. Are they rubber stamped as is?
Well, nothing has been rubber stamped. I should say that for folks at home. The reason this has taken us so long is because the Department of Health and Department of Education have gone through every aspect of every plan, and there's been a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So there's no rubber stamp. Even the ones the Commissioner highlights, we have called and said, have you thought about doing it this way? Could you adjust it that way? By next Monday, they will have all been gone through and approved on.
Governor, with regard to the FEMA unemployment benefits, when did the state decide to apply? Will the state participate at any level? And what were the underlying metrics at arriving at the $300 payment for 3 weeks?
So last week, as soon as there was an announcement, we got on it. And in fact, even when you asked me about it a week ago, we were already in back and forth with them. I think they approved it on Friday. Yes, Friday. So we got final approval on Friday. The state's role is we have to administer it. So we have to set up a new system to administer it. It's a little technical. The way it works, and I might need a little help here, this is for everyone who's been receiving at least $100 from the state. So the state's role, in addition to setting up a new system to administer it, is we are going to plus up everyone to get to that $100 level. So the state will have to kick in that amount of money. So if you were only receiving $50 from the state's going to give you the 50, so you become eligible, so that you can then get your $900. And the amount was determined by the feds. That's what we were given.
Governor, one other follow-up question, just briefly. It appears that the expenditure page on the Rhode Island Transparency Portal hasn't been updated really since the end of July. Now, one media wag pointed out that, well, we haven't spent any money since the end of July. I'll throw that out there. But will this be corrected soon?
It's updated monthly, so it'll be updated at the end of August.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Related to the extra FEMA money, Governor, for someone who's unemployed, do they have to do anything extra right now? Do they have to reach out to DLT? How is that? There's always some confusion in a situation like this.
The honest answer is we need, next Monday, I will go into that in great detail. We need a few days. We have to set up a whole new system to do this. So I wanted to announce it today because we got the approval Friday, and I wanted folks to know some relief is on the way. And it'll be $900, and it should be in your bank account in a few weeks. The Department of Labor and Training has to, this week, figure out those details. So if folks can hang on till the end of the week, I'd appreciate it.
Governor, the education...
But the answer is no. Like, it'll appear in their bank account, because we know who they are, and we'll just put the money in the bank account. I just don't know the exact details of when and what the process will look like.
The Education Ops Center, is that a proactive approach, or is that, do they react when suddenly there's an outbreak?
Both. It's both. That's an excellent question. It's excellent. It's both. So we are standing it up today. We have the team there, and they are proactively reaching out to schools, talking to principals, talking to superintendents. How's it going? What do you need? Especially around transportation. They're really trying to help them out with that. So right now it's very proactive. Once schools open and we start to see positive cases, this and that, it'll also be reactive.
The Bradley officials that you mentioned, those new symptoms that some children are exhibiting, is that something that they feel in-person learning could curb, or is it all things pandemic involved, maybe a parent's out of work, or?
Also an excellent question. You'd have to ask them, they're the experts, and I think the answer is it's both. However, they were clear to point out that it coincides with distance learning. Many children have been left alone. Many children have been, isolated in a room by themselves with an iPad while their parents work. And we hear a lot of it from kids who are definitely more sad, depressed, anxious because they can't get to school. So I think it is both, but yeah, absolutely. They were pretty clear that the isolation that comes with being at home due to distance learning contributed to it.
Governor, who is going to be running the new EOC?
The National Guard is primarily leading it, but in close collaboration with RIDE. So Angelica has done a fantastic job. She has a whole team within RIDE. Her chief of staff is on it, working hand in glove with General Callahan.
And have we updated, based on the most recent numbers, which communities would not be able to open right now today?
Do you know? I know it's Providence and Pawtucket and Central Falls.
Yeah, we'll be updating through the course of this week because we'll use data from last week. So later on, by Wednesday, we should have that updated information.
I think as of right now, it's those three.
Yes.
Yeah, it's today, but that goes to Ted's question. If there is a unforeseen spike somewhere between now and next Monday, which I don't anticipate, then we would say so-and-so goes on the list. I do want to make one thing clear. For the private schools, the non-public schools, they have to follow 4 out of the 5 of the reopening metrics, but not the municipal readiness metric. So if it's say, private school in Providence, even though Providence, the city, won't pass the municipal check, if you're a parochial school or a private school in Providence, you don't have to do that because most of their kids don't come from Providence.
Governor,
Sorry, he wasn't finished. I interrupted.
And the numbers that Dr. Alexander Scott had about the number of cases in that last week in August that had to do with social gatherings, and then also the number of cases that identified as Hispanic, points to maybe we've had recently a bit of a focus on beaches, parties, recreation. Maybe this looks like the focus should be a little bit more back towards essential workers that we had a little bit earlier. I don't know if you can address that at all. Is that where maybe our focus has drifted a bit?
So what we are seeing with the data definitely points to more of that recreational activity contributing. What ends up happening is in our more dense communities where populations are closer together. If you are not wearing masks, engaging in the distancing effectively, the risk of transmission becomes higher and can be evidenced in some of our populations, as I shared, having cases more than with others. When we are seeing cases in work settings, most of the time it's connected to what happened in the community from a transmission standpoint. So we never want to let up in being able to focus on our work settings, helping to make sure that people have the support to not go to work sick, including and especially our essential workers who are on the front lines, making sure that all of us have the services we need, whether food in restaurants or family members in nursing homes and other places. We want to ensure that they have the support needed to stay home if they are sick or have any symptoms, and that they have the support needed to wear masks so that they are not at risk of transmitting and have the information that they need. We also know that those cases can be higher in the work setting if it is more in the community. And the highest risk of transmission in the community across the country, where all of my counterparts are relaying the same information, it's the social gatherings where people's guards are down and they're not wearing the masks effectively or at all. And they're relatively young or healthy feeling, so they think it's fine, and that's how transmission spreads. So we want to make sure as we apply additional attention to those gatherings wherever they're occurring in all communities that they are occurring, that people understand how critical it is to continue to wear your mask, family gathering, social, otherwise.
I have a question for the governor. It's, with the EDOC and the services that the state's providing, such as walkthroughs of school classrooms and so on, what happens if schools or classrooms basically flunk that walkthrough test? And I mean, at this point, I assume we have no real idea how many will pass, how many will fail, or what. But ultimately, that's going to come down to money, and a lot of other issues that are mentioned on that slide are money, including transportation, air quality, and a lot of things. So you've said that you can provide PPE and that kind of support to school districts, but the expensive stuff, I don't know if you've really addressed that at all. What if schools need HVAC systems? What if schools need HEPA filters? What if schools need buses?
So the answer to your fundamental question is if they flunk, then they can't open for full in-person learning. And however, I don't necessarily agree with you that it's just money. A fan, an open window, a tent in the parking lot, things, air filtration systems that we can procure, that we can buy. You know, there's lots of different ways to skin a cat that it's not all money. Also, we've sent $50 million. In fact, just today, we put the application out for districts to apply, submit their reimbursements for this extra stuff that they're buying and to tap into their portion of the extra $50 million in order to do the retrofitting.
How many applications have come in, if any?
We just started today, so I suspect none as of whatever time it is now.
But to Michael's point, you know, the cities and towns are very frustrated with the administration at this point. They say they haven't gotten their usual amount of money that they would have gotten on the pilot aid to begin with. I know the League of Cities and Towns is estimating it's going to cost more than $50 million. Senator Reid did make sure that 1.25 was in your hands back in April. And they're like, well, if it's here, why aren't we getting more? Why aren't we able to do this more quickly? I have to think the air filtration system is expensive, for example.
Not all of them. You'd be surprised, and that's why we've hired this. I've learned a lot from talking to these people. There are some really excellent low-cost, high-quality measures, and that's why we've hired a special air quality expert, which I am not. You know, I hear their frustration. I'm frustrated with Congress and the Trump administration. Like, we don't have a budget passed. That is highly frustrating. I hear that the mayors are frustrated. I'm operating the government 1 month at a time according to last year's budget, and that's why they haven't received the increases. So it is, their frustration is valid and heard. We're doing what we know how to do. I would say relatively in Rhode Island, our cities and towns are in much better position because the state is handling the COVID response. You know, we talk to our colleagues around the country, it's the city or county Department of Health that's doing all the contact tracing. Same in Massachusetts and everywhere. So, listen, of course they're frustrated. This is a frustrating time. Everyone's frustrated. We're helping them the best that we can. If we get more federal stimulus, we'll make more money available. You know, what President Trump should do is put a serious plan forward to Congress to fund the reopening of schools. And that's what should happen. That's not happening, so we're doing the best we can.
Last question.
Commissioner Fontaine-Green. About a month ago, you and I spoke at the end of a session about the RICAS testing. For many, that may seem months away, yet at the same time, it is a seminal event in the school systems here in the state. A great deal of the curriculum is oriented towards that. Is there any, and as a result, a lot of the teaching time is oriented towards that. And there's always been a great deal of controversy about teaching to the test. You mentioned that, I guess statutorily, you have to perform the RICAS. Is there any relief from that? Is there any way to mitigate the impact of that?
So
Given
a
all
couple
this-
of things. We should be teaching to the standards, not the test. So I have to make that very clear. We should be teaching to the standards, and the assessment is aligned to the standards, not the other way around. So is there going to be relief of the RICAS? I don't know. That is up to the federal government. They made the decision, and we'll wait and see. I don't really have an answer for that, but I don't want anyone to think that we're teaching to the test. We're teaching to the standards.
I know a great deal of the teaching community feels that given the physical challenges under COVID of teaching, that perhaps this might be an opportunity to step back and really focus on essentials, and I mean essentials, basic reading and writing skills, particularly after the Johns Hopkins review of what you've essentially inherited.
Yes, I agree. You heard the governor's numbers on distance learning, and particularly with math. As a state, we struggle with math, period. And in some of our districts that were struggling prior to this, this is why we really need to move forward, because we do have professional development, we do have opportunities. We have to focus in on instruction and learning. And I think that when you say the basics, we have to look at the standard, right? Because the standard is what guides. This is what a child should be doing by the end of this grade. These are the skills that they should have mastered. And I think that is the conversation that we need to have. Partly what's happened, I will tell you, is that whether the student masters or not, they keep moving on. So when you say the basics, I hear what you're saying. We just need to get really good at what we're doing, and that means moving forward. And I think that we'll see a lot of that when we look at what's happened with distance learning, where we are, and how we move forward. So I don't disagree with you. And I tell you, we'll find out from the federal government. But we need to continue to teach our kids. We need to continue to move forward.